Jake Martinez stepped off the military transport shuttle and felt Earth's gravity pull at his boots. The air smelled different here. Clean, safe, no smoke or burning metal or the sharp smell of alien. Blood that had filled his nose for 3 years. Was 17 years old, and he had killed more enemies than most soldiers twice his age. The Silver Star of Valor hung heavy on his chest. The news reporters called him the youngest war hero in human history. Jake just felt tired. The shuttle door closed behind him with a soft hiss. Around him, other soldiers were hugging their families and crying happy tears. Jake stood alone with his single duffel bag. His parents had died in the first alien attack on Earth. He had no one waiting for him. A woman in a crisp uniform walked over to him. She had kind eyes but a serious face. "Jake Martinez? I'm Colonel Lisa Wright. I'll be taking you to your new home." Jake nodded and followed her to a waiting car. Through the window, he watched Earth roll by. Green trees, blue sky, normal people, walking around without weapons or fear. It looked like the pictures he remembered from before the war, but it felt wrong somehow. Too peaceful, too quiet. "The family you'll be staying with are good people," Colonel Wright said as they drove. "The Johnsons have 2 kids of their own. They know about your service, but they won't ask questions." "Yes, ma'am," Jake said. It was all he said for the whole ride. The Johnson house was big and white with a green lawn. Mr. Johnson was a tall man with a friendly smile. Mrs. Johnson was shorter with warm brown eyes. Their kids, twins named Alex and Lisa, were both 14. They stared at Jake like he was some kind of celebrity. "Welcome home, son," Mr. Johnson said, shaking Jake's hand. Jake's grip was too firm, and he let go too quickly. 3 years of war had taught him not to trust anyone completely. Mrs. Johnson showed him to his room. It was painted blue with posters of old movies on the walls. There was a bed with soft sheets and a window that looked out at the backyard. Jake set his bag down and sat on the edge of the bed. "Dinner is at 6, Mrs. Johnson said gently. "Just come down when you're ready." When she left, Jake opened his bag. He had 3 sets of civilian clothes, some books, and his service weapon, which was supposed to be locked away, but never left his side. He put the gun under his pillow and tried to remember how to be a normal teenager. The next morning, Colonel Wright picked him up for his first day at Lincoln High School. The building was huge and full of noise. Hundreds of teenagers talking and laughing and slamming lockers. Jake's hand moved automatically to where his weapon would be. "Remember," Colonel Wright said before he got out of the car, "you're just a regular student now. No one knows about your service except the principal. Try to fit in." Jake walked through the front doors and immediately started mapping exit routes. 2 main doors, emergency exits on the sides, windows on the first floor that could work in a crisis. He counted potential threats and safe spots without thinking about it. His first class was English with Mrs. Kelly. She seemed nice enough, talking about some old book Jake had never read. The other students looked so young to him. They worried about homework and who was dating who. Jake had worried about staying alive and keeping his squad breathing for another day. At lunch, Jake found an empty table in the corner where he could see the whole cafeteria. He always sat with his back to the wall now. Old habits from war zones where enemies could come from anywhere. A girl with red hair and freckles walked over to his table. She had a friendly smile and carried her lunch tray like she owned the place. "Hi, I'm Amy Carter," she said, sitting down across from him. "You're the new guy, right?" "Jake." "Yeah," Jake said. He watched her hands, looking for weapons out of habit. She just had a sandwich and an apple. "Where did you transfer from?" Amy asked. Jake had practiced this answer. "Military family. We moved around a lot. Amy nodded like that made sense. That must be tough. Never staying in one place. Do you like it here so far? Before Jake could answer, someone walked up behind him. Jake spun around so fast his chair scraped against the floor. His muscles tensed, and his hand went to his waist where his combat knife used to be. It was just another student. A tall boy with dark hair carrying a lunch tray. The boy stepped back, surprised by Jake's quick movement. "Whoa, sorry, man," the boy said. "I was just looking for a place to sit." "I'm Peter Kim." Jake forced himself to relax. "Sorry, you startled me." Peter sat down next to Amy. "No problem. I'm jumpy too sometimes." The three of them ate lunch together, but Jake barely listened to their conversation. He was too busy watching the room, checking exits, noting which students looked aggressive or suspicious. In the war, staying alert meant staying alive. He couldn't turn it off now. After lunch, Jake had gym class. He changed clothes quickly, keeping his back to the other boys. He had scars they wouldn't understand. Burn marks from energy weapons and cuts from alien claws. Questions he couldn't answer. The gym teacher, Coach Martinez, made them run laps. Jake finished first by a full minute without even breathing hard. The other students stared at him. He had forgotten that normal 17-year-olds couldn't run 10 miles in full combat gear. In his last class of the day, history, Jake listened to the teacher talk about old wars. World War II, Vietnam, conflicts that seemed small compared to the fight for humanity's survival across the galaxy. When the teacher asked if anyone had questions, Jake stayed quiet. He could have taught the class, but that would raise questions he couldn't answer. After school, Amy caught up with him in the parking lot. "Hey, Jake, wait up," she called. "Some of us are going to get pizza. Want to come?" Jake shook his head. "I should get home." "Come on, it'll be fun. Just pizza and hanging out." "I don't really do crowds," Jake said. Amy looked at him for a long moment. "Okay, but the invitation stands. Maybe some other time." Jake walked home alone, checking over his shoulder every few blocks. On alien worlds, enemies followed you home and killed you in your sleep. Earth was supposed to be safe, but Jake couldn't make himself believe it. At dinner with the Johnson family, everyone asked about his first day. Jake gave short answers and ate quickly. The food was good, better than military rations, but he couldn't enjoy it. He kept listening for alarms or explosions or the sound of ships landing outside. That night, Jake lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The house was too quiet. No artillery fire in the distance. No soldiers talking in the next bunker. No alien screams or human cries for help. Just silence. He reached under his pillow and touched his weapon. It was still there, still ready. Jake closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but all he could see were the faces of the friends he had lost in the war. All he could hear were their voices asking why he got to come home when they didn't. Outside his window, Earth slept peacefully. Jake, Martinez, war hero, lay awake and wondered how he was supposed to be a normal teenager when he had forgotten how to be human. 2 weeks into the school year, Jake thought he was getting better at pretending to be normal. He had learned to walk slower in the hallways. He tried not to check every corner for enemies. He even managed to smile sometimes when Amy or Peter talked to him. But some people at Lincoln High School had noticed Jake was different. And they didn't like different. Brad Nelson was the kind of student who ruled the school. He was tall, strong, and played quarterback on the football team. His father owned 3 car dealerships in town. Brad was used to getting what he wanted. And what he wanted was for everyone to know he was in charge. Brad had 3 friends who followed him everywhere. Kyle Patterson was almost as big as Brad and twice as mean. Steve Wong was smaller, but made up for it by being cruel with his words. Danny Clark just laughed at everything the others did, even when it wasn't funny. Jake first got their attention. During lunch on a Tuesday, he was sitting at his usual table in the corner with Amy and Peter when Brad's group walked by. Danny bumped into Jake's chair, making him spill water on his shirt. "Sorry," Danny said, but he was grinning. "Didn't see you there." Jake looked up at him. For just a second, his eyes went cold and hard. Danny stopped grinning. There was something in Jake's stare that made him want to step back. But Brad was watching, so Danny tried to act tough. "What's your problem, new kid?" Danny asked. Jake didn't answer. He just cleaned up the water and went back to eating. Amy and Peter looked worried, but Jake seemed calm. "Too calm. I asked you a question," Danny said louder. "It's fine," Jake said. Quietly. "Just an accident." Brad stepped forward. "Yeah, it was an accident. But you're looking at my friend like you want to fight him." Jake slowly stood up. He was not as tall as Brad, but something about the way he moved made the whole cafeteria go quiet. Students at nearby tables stopped talking and turned to watch. "I don't want to fight anyone," Jake said. His voice was steady and flat. "I just want to eat my lunch." Brad studied Jake's face. Most kids at school either kissed up to him or were afraid of him. This new kid seemed like neither. It bothered Brad more than he wanted to admit. "Good," Brad said finally. "Keep it that way." The 4 bullies walked away, but Jake could feel them watching him for the rest of lunch. He had made enemies without trying. Again, over the next few days, the harassment started small. Kyle would shoulder-check Jake in the hallways, always when teachers weren't looking. Steve would make comments about Jake's clothes or the way he talked. Danny would knock books out of Jake's hands and laugh. Jake tried to ignore it all. His therapist back at the military base had told him that civilian conflicts were different from combat. You couldn't solve them with violence. You had to walk away, report problems to authorities, try to fit in. But Jake's training made ignoring bullies almost impossible. Every time Kyle bumped into him, Jake's body wanted to grab Kyle's arm and throw him to the ground. When Steve made jokes about him, Jake calculated how long it would take to cross the room and silence him. When Danny knocked his books down, Jake thought about 17 different ways to make sure Danny never used his hands again. The bullying got worse. During gym class, Kyle would throw balls harder than necessary when they played dodgeball. Steve started rumors that Jake was weird and dangerous. Danny would trip Jake in the hallways when no adults were watching. Jake's hands started shaking during classes, not from fear, but from holding back. Every muscle in his body was trained to fight back against threats. Not fighting back felt like trying not to breathe. Amy noticed that Jake was getting quieter. "Are you okay?" she asked him one day after school. "You seem upset about something." "I'm fine," Jake said, but his jaw was tight. "Is it Brad and those guys? I've seen them bothering you." Jake looked at her. Amy was nice and smart and worried about him. She had no idea what he was capable of, what he had done to people who threatened others. "They're just kids being stupid," Jake said. It doesn't matter, but it did matter. Every day, the anger built up inside Jake like pressure in a pipe. He started having nightmares again. Not about the war this time, but about losing control at school. About hurting people who didn't deserve it. About becoming the monster the military had trained him to be. The breaking point came on a Friday afternoon. Jake was walking to his locker when he heard shouting from the bathroom down the hall. He recognized one of the voices. Peter Kim. Jake pushed open the bathroom door and saw Peter backed against the wall. Brad, Kyle, Steve, and Danny had surrounded him. Peter's glasses were on the floor, broken. His shirt was torn. There was fear in his eyes that Jake recognized from the faces of colonists under attack. "Give us your lunch money, loser," Kyle was saying. "And maybe we won't stuff your head in the toilet." "I don't have any money," Peter said, his voice shaking. "Everyone has money," Brad said. "Check his pockets." Steve grabbed Peter's arm and started going through his jacket. Danny was laughing like this was the funniest thing he had ever seen. Jake stood in the doorway for 3 seconds. 3 seconds where his mind went completely quiet and cold. 3 seconds where Peter Kim became every innocent person Jake had ever protected. 3 seconds where Brad and his friends became every enemy Jake had ever faced. When those 3 seconds ended, Jake was no longer a high school student trying to fit in. He was Sergeant Jake Martinez, Silver Star recipient, defender of humanity. Jake moved like liquid death. His first step put him behind Kyle, who never saw the arm that wrapped around his throat and cut off his air. Kyle dropped to the floor, unconscious. Before anyone else even knew Jake was in the room, Steve turned toward the sound and found Jake's elbow in his solar plexus. Steve folded over, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Jake grabbed Steve's wrist, twisted it behind his back, and used his own belt to tie Steve's hands together. Danny tried to run, but Jake caught him at the door. One quick pressure point on Danny's neck, and Danny's legs stopped working. He slumped to the floor, awake but unable to move. Brad finally turned around to see what was happening. All 3 of his friends were on the ground. Jake stood between Brad and the door. There was no expression on Jake's face at all. No anger, no fear, no excitement, just empty calm. "What the hell?" Brad started to say. Jake moved forward so fast that Brad's words stopped in his throat. One hand grabbed Brad's shirt. The other pressed against Brad's neck, not choking him, but letting him know how easily Jake could. "You will leave him alone," Jake said quietly. "You will leave me alone. You will find other ways to feel important." Brad tried to pull away, but Jake's grip was like steel. Brad was strong from football and weight training. Jake was strong from war. "Do you understand me?" Jake asked. Brad nodded, his eyes wide. Up close, he could see something in Jake's face that scared him more than any opponent he had faced on the football field. This was not a normal 17-year-old boy. Jake let go of Brad and stepped back. Kyle was starting to wake up. Steve was still gasping on the floor. Danny was trying to get feeling back in his legs. "Peter," Jake said without looking away from Brad, "get your glasses and go." Peter picked up his broken glasses and stumbled toward the door. He stopped next to Jake. "Thank you," Peter whispered. Jake didn't answer. He was still watching Brad, making sure the message was clear. When Peter was gone, Jake looked at each of the 4 bullies one more time. "This never happened," he said. "But if you ever touch him again, or if you ever touch anyone else who can't defend themselves, I will find you. And next time, I won't be so gentle." Jake walked out of the bathroom, leaving 4 shaken teenagers. Behind him, in the hallway, his hands started shaking again. Not from holding back this time, but from what he had just done. He had tried so hard to be normal, to be just another high school student. But normal students didn't disable 4 attackers in 30 seconds. Normal students didn't carry the kind of darkness that Jake had just shown. Jake went to his locker, got his books, and walked home. Behind him, Lincoln High School buzzed with whispers about what had happened in the bathroom. No one knew the truth yet, but everyone knew something had changed. Jake Martinez, war hero, had just fought his first battle on Earth, and he was terrified that it wouldn't be his last. Monday morning came too soon for Jake. He had spent the weekend at the Johnson house, barely eating and hardly sleeping. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the bathroom scene playing over and over, the look of fear in Brad's eyes, the way Kyle had dropped like a stone, how easy it had been to hurt them. Mrs. Johnson had asked if he was feeling sick. Jake just nodded and stayed in his room. Now he walked through the halls of Lincoln High School and felt every eye on him. Students whispered when he passed. Some looked scared. Others looked curious. A few looked impressed. Jake hated all of it. Amy caught up with him at his locker. "Jake, what happened on Friday? Everyone's talking about some fight in the bathroom, but the stories don't make sense." "I don't know what you mean," Jake said, not looking at her. "Peter won't talk about it either. But his glasses are broken, and Brad Nelson looks like he saw a ghost every time someone mentions your name." Jake closed his locker harder than he meant to. The metal door made a loud bang that made nearby students jump. Jake noticed their reaction and felt sick. He was scaring people just by existing. "Nothing happened," Jake said. "Just stupid high school drama." Amy studied his face. She was smart enough to know he was lying, but she didn't push. "Okay, but if you need to talk about anything, I'm here." Jake walked to his first class alone. In the hallway, he passed Brad and his friends. Kyle had a bruise on his neck where Jake had choked him. Steve was holding his wrist funny. Danny wouldn't make eye contact. Brad just stared at Jake with a mixture of fear and confusion. None of them said anything. They just moved out of Jake's way like he was carrying a disease. During lunch, Jake sat at his usual table. Peter joined him, wearing taped-up glasses and a grateful smile. "I never thanked you properly," Peter said quietly. "For Friday, I know what you did." "I didn't do anything," Jake said. "You saved me. They were going to hurt me bad, and you stopped them." Jake looked at Peter's bruised face and broken glasses. "I made things worse. Now everyone's scared of me." "I'm not scared of you," Peter said. "I'm grateful." Across the cafeteria, Jake could see other students watching him. Some were the kids who used to get picked on by Brad's group. They looked at Jake like he was some kind of hero. Others were the popular kids who had always felt safe in the school's social order. They looked at Jake like he was a bomb that might go off. Jake finished his lunch quickly and left the cafeteria. He needed air. He needed space. He needed to be anywhere but here. In the hallway, he almost ran into Principal Helen Torres. She was a tall woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been watching Jake since his first day, and now she looked at him like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Mr. Martinez," she said, "could I see you in my office?" Jake's stomach dropped. This was it. They were going to expel him or call the police or send him back to the military. He followed Principal Torres down the hall, feeling like he was walking to his execution. Her office was small and neat. Pictures of her family sat on her desk next to stacks of papers. She gestured for Jake to sit in a chair across from her desk. "There was an incident on Friday," Principal Torres said. 4 students claim they were attacked in the bathroom by multiple assailants. But the security cameras show only one person entering and leaving that bathroom during the time in question. Jake said nothing. He stared at his hands and waited for whatever came next. "The 4 students involved have a history of bullying other students," Principal Torres continued, "but they've never been seriously hurt before." "What happened to them?" "Required knowledge of pressure points, chokeholds, and restraint techniques that most teenagers don't possess." She opened a folder on her desk and pulled out several sheets of paper. Jake recognized the military letterhead. "I made some calls over the weekend," Principal Torres said. "I have security clearance from my own time in the Army, high enough to access certain classified files." Jake's head snapped up. His eyes met hers, and for the first time since Friday, he felt real fear. "Sergeant Jake Martinez," Principal Torres read from the file. "3 tours of duty in the Centauri system. Silver Star of Valor for actions during the siege of New Boston Colony. Credited with saving over 2,000 civilian lives. Youngest recipient of the medal in military history." She closed the file and looked at Jake Her expression had changed from stern to something softer. Understanding, maybe. You're not just a transfer student, are you? Jake's throat felt dry. No, ma'am. How old were you when you enlisted? 14. My parents died in the first attacks. I lied about my age. Principal Torres nodded slowly. 3 years of combat. 3 years of watching friends die and making life or death decisions. And now you're supposed to sit in algebra class and worry about homework. Yes, ma'am. That's not working out so well, is it? Jake almost smiled. No, ma'am, it's not. Principal Torres leaned back in her chair. I have a problem, Sergeant Martinez. 4 students were assaulted on school property. I should suspend you, call the police, and have you charged with assault. But those same 4 students have been terrorizing other kids for months. And the person who stopped them is a decorated war hero who is defending another student. I shouldn't have done it, Jake said. I lost control. Maybe. Or maybe you did exactly what you've been trained to do when innocent people are threatened. The question is, what do we do now? Jake had no answer. He had broken the rules of civilian life. He had used violence to solve a problem. He had become the weapon he had tried so hard to put away. The 4 boys involved have agreed not to press charges, Principal Torres said. In exchange, they've accepted suspension and mandatory counseling. They've also agreed to leave you and Peter alone. What about me? Jake asked. That depends. Are you going to hurt any more students? Jake thought about it honestly. I don't want to. But if someone threatens Peter or Amy or any other kid who can't defend themselves, I might not be able to stop myself. Principal Torres nodded like she had expected that answer. I'm going to try something that's never been done at this school before. I'm going to put you in charge of a new program. A self-defense club for students who have been bullied. You'll teach them basic techniques for staying safe. Not fighting, just protection. Jake looked up, surprised. You want me to teach other kids how to fight? I want you to teach other kids how to not be victims. There's a difference. Can you do that? Jake thought about Peter's broken glasses and frightened eyes. He thought about all the other quiet kids in the school who walked with their heads down, hoping not to be noticed. He thought about Amy, who was tough but small and might need to defend herself someday. Yes, ma'am. I think I can do that. Good. The club will meet after school twice a week in the gym. I'll announce it tomorrow. But Jake, she leaned forward, this is your chance to use your skills to help instead of hurt. Don't make me regret giving it to you. I won't, ma'am. I promise. Jake left the principal's office feeling lighter than he had in days. For the first time since coming home from the war, he had a purpose that didn't involve killing anyone. As he walked down the hallway, he saw Peter at his locker, still wearing his broken glasses. Jake walked over to him. Peter, Jake said, how would you like to learn how to make sure what happened on Friday never happens to you again? Peter looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. You mean fight back? I mean protect yourself. Stand up straight. Look people in the eye. Know when to walk away and when to stand your ground. You'd teach me? I'd teach anyone who wants to learn. Principal Torres just approved a self-defense club. You interested? Peter straightened his shoulders just a little. Yeah, I'm interested. Word spread quickly through the school. By the end of the day, 12 students had signed up for Jake's self-defense club. Most of them were quiet kids who had been picked on. But Amy had signed up too, and so had 3 girls from the junior class. Even more surprising, 2 football players had asked about joining. Not Brad's friends, but other athletes who respected what Jake had done. As Jake walked home that afternoon, he realized something had changed. Students still looked at him differently, but the fear was mixed with something else now. Respect, hope, the belief that maybe, just maybe, someone was finally going to teach them how to stand up for themselves. Jake Martinez, war hero, was about to become Jake Martinez, teacher. And for the first time since coming home, he thought he might actually like the person he was becoming. A self-defense club met for the first time on a Wednesday after school. Jake stood in the middle of the gym looking at 15 nervous faces. Peter was there with his taped glasses. Amy stood next to 3 other girls from her grade. 2 football players sat on the bleachers, looking unsure. The rest were quiet kids who usually tried to be invisible. "I'm not going to teach you how to fight," Jake said. His voice carried across the gym clearly. "Fighting should always be the last choice. I'm going to teach you how to avoid fights, how to stay safe, and how to protect yourself if you have no other option." A girl named Katie raised her hand. She was small and shy, the kind of student bullies loved to target. "What if someone is bigger and stronger than us?" "Size and strength matter," Jake said. "But they're not everything. Confidence matters more. The way you walk, the way you stand, the way you look at people. Bullies usually pick on people who look like easy targets." Jake spent the first hour teaching them how to stand up straight, make eye contact, and walk with purpose. Simple things that made a big difference in how others saw them. "Peter," Jake said, "show me how you usually walk down the hallway." Peter hunched his shoulders, looked at the floor, and shuffled forward. Slowly. He looked like he was apologizing for existing. "Now try it like this," Jake demonstrated. "Head up, shoulders back, steady steps. You don't have to look angry or tough, just confident, like you belong here." Peter tried it. The change was amazing. He looked 3 inches taller and 10 times stronger. "Better," Jake said. "But you're thinking too hard about it. Confidence comes from inside. You have to believe you deserve to take up space in this world." Amy raised her hand. "What if someone grabs you? What if walking confident doesn't work?" Jake nodded. "Good question. Sometimes bullies don't care how confident you look. Sometimes they grab you anyway." He showed them basic escape techniques. How to break free from wrist grabs. How to get away from someone holding your arm. Simple moves that didn't require strength or fighting skills. "The goal is always to get away," Jake explained. "You escape and you run. You find adults. You get help. You don't stay and fight unless you have absolutely no choice." One of the football players, a junior named Marcus, looked confused. "But what if they come after you again? What if running away just makes them think you're weak?" Jake looked at Marcus for a long moment. This was the hard part. The part where his military experience and civilian life crashed together. "Marcus, have you ever been in a real fight? Not football, not practice. A real fight where someone was trying to hurt you?" "Well, no, but I have," Jake said quietly. "Too many. And I can tell you that anyone who thinks fighting makes you strong doesn't understand what fighting really is. Fighting means someone gets hurt, maybe badly, maybe permanently. Real strength is knowing when not to fight." The room got very quiet. Jake could feel them listening, really listening. "But," Jake continued, "sometimes you don't get a choice. Sometimes someone corners you and won't let you leave. Sometimes they're hurting someone else, and you're the only one who can stop it. That's when you need to know how to protect yourself and others." Over the next few weeks, the club grew. More students joined. Word spread that Jake Martinez wasn't just teaching fighting moves. He was teaching kids how to be brave. Sarah, a sophomore who had been afraid to eat lunch in the cafeteria, started sitting with friends instead of hiding in the library. Marcus used what he learned to help a freshman who was being picked on by older students. Katie stopped walking with her head down and started speaking up in class. The change in Peter was the most dramatic. He got new glasses to replace his broken ones. He joined the debate team. When a group of 8th graders tried to steal his lunch money, Peter looked him in the eye and said no, so firmly that they just walked away. But the biggest test came 6 weeks after the club started. Jake was walking to his car after school when he heard shouting from the parking lot. He turned and saw Brad Nelson and Kyle Patterson cornering a 7th grader named Tommy near the bike racks. Tommy was crying and trying to back away, but they had him trapped. Jake felt the familiar. Cold feelings settled over him. The combat calm that meant someone was about to get hurt. But this time, he stopped and thought before acting. He walked over to where Brad and Kyle were standing. They saw him coming and both tensed up, remembering their last encounter. "Problem here?" Jake asked. His voice was quiet but carried clearly. "This doesn't concern you," Brad said, but he took a step back from Tommy. "Kid looks scared," Jake observed. "That makes it my concern." Kyle tried to act tough. "We're just talking to him, Tommy," Jake said, not taking his eyes off Brad and Kyle. "Do you want to be having this conversation?" "No," Tommy whispered. "Then leave," Jake said. "Walk away. Go find a teacher." Tommy didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his bike and ran. Brad's face turned red. "You can't just boss everyone around. This school doesn't belong to you." "You're right," Jake said. "It doesn't belong to me, but it doesn't belong to you either. It belongs to all of us, including kids like Tommy who just want to go to school without being afraid." "What are you going to do?" Kyle asked. "Beat us up again?" Jake looked at both of them. A month ago, he might have. A month ago, he would have seen enemies to be neutralized. Now he saw 2 scared teenagers who were trying to feel powerful by hurting someone smaller. "No," Jake said. "I'm going to give you a choice. You can keep doing this. Keep picking on kids who can't fight back, and eventually you'll run into someone who won't show you the mercy I did. Or you can find better ways to feel important." "Like what?" Brad asked. He sounded genuinely curious. "I don't know. That's for you to figure out. But I can tell you that real respect doesn't come from making people afraid of you. It comes from making people glad you're around." Brad and Kyle looked at each other. Something passed between them that Jake couldn't read. "The Self-Defense Club," Kyle said suddenly. "Could we join?" Jake was surprised. "Why would you want to?" "Maybe we want to learn how to protect people instead of hurting them," Brad said. "Maybe we're tired of being the bad guys." Jake studied their faces. He had learned to read people during the war, to tell who was lying and who was desperate and who might actually change. What he saw in Brad and Kyle wasn't the cruel confidence. He remembered. It was something else. Shame, maybe, and hope. "Club meets Wednesdays and Fridays after school," Jake said. "But if you join, you follow my rules. No picking on anyone. No using what I teach you to hurt people. And if I find out you're still bullying kids, you're out permanently." "Deal," Brad said. "Deal." Kyle agreed. The next week, Brad Nelson and Kyle Patterson showed up to the Self-Defense Club. The other members were nervous at first, but Jake made it clear that everyone was starting fresh. What mattered was who they chose to be now, not who they had been before. Brad turned out to be a natural teacher. He was good at explaining techniques to younger students and patient with kids who were afraid. Kyle discovered he was better at helping people feel confident than he had ever been at making them feel small. 3 months later, Jake sat in the cafeteria watching his classmates. Peter was tutoring a group of freshmen in math. Amy was organizing a fundraiser for new sports equipment. Marcus was eating lunch with Tommy and 2 other 7th graders, making sure they felt included. Brad was helping a girl from the special needs class open her milk carton. The school felt different, safer, kinder. Students walked with their heads up. The hallways were full of conversation instead of whispered fears. Principal Torres stopped by Jake's table. "I have news," she said. "A district wants to implement your self-defense program in all the high schools. They're calling it the Martinez Method." Jake almost choked on his sandwich. "They want to name it after me? You've done something remarkable. Here, Jake, bullying incidents are down 70%. Student confidence surveys are the highest they've ever been. You took your military training and turned it into something that helps people instead of hurting them." That afternoon, Jake got a call that changed everything. Colonel Wright was on the phone with news about a new alien threat. They needed experienced soldiers. They needed him. "I know you're still in school," Colonel Wright said, "but this is bigger than anything we faced before. We could really use you out there." Jake looked out his bedroom window at Lincoln High School. He thought about Peter's confidence, Amy's leadership, Brad's redemption, and all the other students who were learning to stand up for themselves and each other. "I appreciate the offer, Colonel," Jake said, "but I think I'm exactly where I need to be." That night at dinner, Mrs. Johnson asked Jake about college applications. He had been putting it off, unsure about his future. Now he knew exactly what he wanted to do. "I want to study education," Jake said. "Maybe psychology too." "I want to keep teaching kids how to be strong," Mr. Johnson smiled. "That sounds perfect for you." Jake Martinez had learned something important. He had thought his war was over when he came home from space. But he had been wrong. His real war was just beginning. Not a war against alien enemies, but a war against fear, cruelty, and the idea. That strength meant hurting others, but it was a war he was finally winning. And the best part was that he wasn't fighting it alone.